Don't bother showing up to the family reunion. We're cutting ties. That was the voicemail my father left me at exactly 7:42 p.m. on a random Thursday night. No explanation, no lead up, just those words. Sharp, calculated, and cold, like something straight out of a boardroom memo. Not exactly the kind of message you'd expect to receive from your own father. By the time I finished listening, there was no wave of panic or anger. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. Instead, I felt still, like hearing confirmation of something I'd already known deep down for years, but couldn't bring myself to admit. I didn't call him back. I didn't ask for answers. I simply texted 2 words, understood. Afterward, I quietly logged into the loan management portal for the commercial property tied to my family's 3rd-generation business. 2 years ago, I had signed my name in trust, helping them secure the expansion they wanted. That signature was the one thing holding the business together. And as I stared at that screen, it became clear it was time to let go. In less than 6 minutes, I revoked my name. Just like that. The weight I'd been dragging around for years suddenly started to lift. 36 hours later, my phone blew up like crazy. 78 missed calls from my mom, 13 from my dad, 7 from my older brother, and 1 voicemail from my dad's accountant, practically yelling, "We need to talk immediately." That's when it hit me. They didn't cut me off. I had finally cut them loose. Growing up in a family business, you learn a lot. Mainly that family often takes a backseat to dollars and deals. My dad, Richard, didn't just run his company like that. He ran our entire household the same way, brick by brick, rule by rule. He built his world with strict precision and zero room for softness. He ran a chain of auto shops across the state, and the business was as disciplined and unyielding as the man himself. By the time I was 12, I could read profit and loss sheets better than I could read bedtime stories. At 16, I was running payroll for shop number 3 during school breaks, no questions asked. It wasn't a favor, it wasn't optional, it was just expected. "We don't hire outsiders," my dad always said. "We raise replacements." For him, the business wasn't just a job, it was who we were. Loyalty wasn't optional. It was the currency we traded in. You didn't question decisions, you didn't complain, and you definitely didn't talk back. My older brother Mason, he was the golden child, the heir apparent from day one. He could skip responsibilities, mess up, throw tantrums, and still get praised for his potential. Me, I was the invisible backbone, organizing files, fixing his mistakes, and covering for him in investor meetings. And my mom, she stayed out of it all. Her role was hosting dinners, smiling for the guests, and occasionally reminding me to be grateful for what your father's building for us. For years, I tried to earn my place. I graduated at the top of my MBA class, turned down a competitive job offer, and threw myself into the family business. When they decided to launch a new headquarters, I was the one who negotiated the lease, secured the best rates, and helped push the project forward. When the bank needed a second signer for the operating loan, I didn't hesitate. I signed without question because I believed family was forever. I thought loyalty would finally make me seen. I was wrong. The cracks started to show when I questioned Mason's expense reports. He'd been charging personal trips to the company card and labeling private dinners as client meetings. When I brought it up to my father, he waved me off with a curt, "Don't nitpick your brother, he's learning." 2 months later, I was removed from board meetings under the guise of streamlining decisions. Suddenly, I was getting vague updates and edited reports with a clear message: stay out of it. Then came the final blow, the family reunion invite. Except it wasn't an invite. It was a voicemail, cold, distant, and perfectly timed just after I'd submitted a financial report to the bank that flagged Mason's misuse of funds. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculated move, a cover-up. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't family anymore. So I stopped being their safety net. Looking back, the warning signs were always there. But when you grow up chasing approval, you become an expert at ignoring the obvious. The first real crack came during a budget review. I'd flagged $12,000 0 cents in duplicate invoices submitted by one of our vendors over 3 months. It wasn't a big deal. I expected a simple fix. But Mason laughed it off. It's a friend of mine. Let it slide. We'll get better terms later. I couldn't let it go, so I brought it up to my father after the meeting professionally. He didn't even look up from his desk. "You need to stop acting like an outsider," he muttered. Outsider. That word stuck with me. Even after managing logistics for 4 expansions, renegotiating our fleet lease for half the cost, and keeping the book spotless for 6 years, I was still an outsider. No matter how much I contributed, how hard I worked, or how loyal I was, the moment I started asking too many questions, I became a problem. That was my wake-up call. I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped covering for their mistakes. And as their so-called empire started to crack and fall apart, I realized something big. Walking away isn't giving up. It's taking back your power. After that, everything changed. At first, it was subtle. My access to back-end systems started disappearing. Then I was cut out of vendor emails. My login for the loan dashboard just stopped working one day. The company credit card they'd given me expired, and no replacement ever showed up. When I asked, all I got were vague excuses, system updates, temporary changes. Meanwhile, Mason, the golden child of the team, was sitting in a fancy new office chair that probably cost more than my first car. That's when it all became crystal clear. That's when I started to piece things together. Quietly, carefully. I created a private folder on my home computer, just in case. I reached out to an old contact at the bank, someone who still owed me a favor, and asked for a casual review of the company's loan structure. I wasn't expecting good news, but what I found still hit like a punch to the gut. The loan we'd secured 2 years ago, meant to expand into regional markets and fuel our growth, had 2 names attached to it. Mine and my father's. Not Mason's, not the company's, just us. And the payments? Barely being made. The company was behind, the collateral terms were on the verge of default. Worse still, my name was being used to stall the creditors. Why? Because I had perfect credit? No debt? A spotless financial record? That was the safe bet. The responsible one. And yet, no one had bothered to tell me the truth. I wasn't just being kept in the dark. I was being used, exploited. I started digging deeper. Internal spending reports, emails Mason had written under my name, no less, documentation showing exactly where the loan money was going. That's when it all became painfully clear. This wasn't just negligence or poor decision-making. It was deliberate. It was a strategy. They'd been cutting me out of the company one step at a time, but keeping me just close enough to milk my signature, my credit, my reliability, until they didn't need me anymore. When I brought the truth to the bank, I knew what was coming. The voicemail they left me days later didn't break me. It confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't family anymore. I was a liability, an inconvenience. They underestimated me. I didn't argue, didn't get emotional. Instead, I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and clicked on a secure folder I'd titled Redemption Plan. Inside was everything I'd been quietly gathering for weeks. A digital copy of the loan agreement I'd signed, proof of financial mismanagement, emails Mason had forged, and even a draft of a termination request from Danielle. Yep, the same Danielle from law school who once helped Alina take down her cheating husband. Some allies are worth keeping around. They thought they could use me and walk away like nothing happened. They thought I'd just let it slide. Wrong. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about taking back what was mine. And I was ready. Danielle and I had gone over the loan terms a million times. I wasn't a guarantor. I was listed as a co-applicant. That tiny detail was my ticket out. By withdrawing my name from the loan before it was restructured, the bank would have to notify the business and reassess it without me. Without my support, their financial stability would crumble. Danielle gave me advice I'll never forget. Don't warn them, don't yell. Just pull the one brick holding up the wall and watch it fall. So that's exactly what I did. I withdrew my name online. It only took 4 minutes. Then I sent the bank everything they needed: proof of vendor fraud, evidence of personal misuse of funds, and documents showing they'd been cutting me out of the loop on purpose. Within the hour, the bank froze the account. No warnings, no emails to the others, just silence. They said they needed to review irregularities, but we both knew what that really meant. They were panicking, trying to figure out how risky this loan suddenly was. While they scrambled, I called my accountant. Not my dad's, mine. We went over everything: my liability, how it would affect my credit, and how to protect my assets. Luckily, I had already moved my savings into a trust the week before. My credit lines, untouchable, was covered. Then I waited. It took about 36 hours for everything to unravel. First, my mom started blowing up my phone with missed calls. Then came Mason's panic texts. What did you do after that? My dad's emails started piling up. Call me now. And finally, a voicemail from his accountant. The guy sounded like he was about to lose it. The loan is collapsing. The bank pulled out. We're on the brink of default. Fix this now. I played that voicemail twice. Not because I didn't get it the first time, but because, for once, it felt like the scales had tipped. For them, it was chaos. For me, it was justice. Justice doesn't always show up with a bang. Sometimes it creeps in quietly until it's impossible to ignore. The first call came from my mom. Her voice wasn't angry, just desperate. Sweetheart, what's going on? Your dad says the bank is freezing the accounts. They might recall the loan. He said, you signed something. I took a moment before answering, keeping my voice calm. I removed my name. That's all. She paused like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You can't just do that. Actually, I can, I said, steady and firm, and I did. Elena, she whispered, as if pleading would change the inevitable. This doesn't just affect you. It affects all of us. I exhaled, the weight of years falling away. No, I said quietly. You all made sure it didn't. I didn't owe them explanations. Not anymore. By the next day, the family business accounts were officially flagged as non-compliant. The bank sent a formal notice of default citing financial misconduct and unauthorized activity. Mason, as the primary financial officer, tried passing it off as a simple clerical error. It didn't work. Vendors started pulling out, and a local news outlet ran a subtle but sharp headline: Family auto chain faces financial trouble amid allegations of mismanagement. I didn't leak the story, but I knew exactly who did. Danielle didn't hold back when she called to fill me in. When people lose power, they scramble for someone to blame. They just didn't see it coming from the one person who already walked away. After that, the voicemails started pouring in. Angry, bitter, full of blame. My dad's voice had this edge of pure contempt in one particularly nasty message. You ungrateful child, he hissed. But for once, his words didn't get to me. I'd already made my move. And honestly, for the first time in years, I felt free. We built that business for you. You're throwing your future away. Mason's voice rang through my head. You think you're so smart, but one day you'll come crawling back. Then the accountant chimed in, clearly fed up. Do you realize what this means? You've destroyed their legacy. Here's the thing, though. They didn't want to admit the truth. The legacy was already gone long before I stepped away. They destroyed it when they put my name on the business, but never gave me a real seat at the table. They destroyed it when they decided I was a threat instead of their daughter. They destroyed it by making me invisible. Now the whole thing's falling apart. The loan is tanking. The trust between them is completely gone. And me. I'm fine. No lawsuits, no financial mess, no drama. Just a clean credit score, and finally, a quieter inbox. I forwarded the last voicemail to Danielle, deleted the rest, and for the first time in days, I took my phone off silent. Their storm was no longer my responsibility. Then the inevitable happened. A family meeting. Not to mend bridges, not to apologize. No, they called this meeting because they finally understood I was the only one who could save them. They picked the same restaurant we'd always gone to for birthdays, the private room with the fireplace, the same corner table that had once seen balloons, toast, and laughter. But this time, it was just Dad, Mom, Mason, and an empty chair set aside for me, as if they still believed they could summon me, like a pawn on their board. I showed up 15 minutes late, on purpose. Mason stood as I walked in. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice tight. "I didn't come for you," I shot back, sliding into my seat. "Let's make this quick." Dad leaned forward, his tone sharp. "You've made your point." "No," I said, calm but firm. "The bank made my point. I just stopped covering for your lie." His jaw clenched. "We're trying to keep this together. You think you're punishing us, but you're just tearing down the legacy your grandfather built." I held his gaze, steady. "Grandpa didn't build a legacy, he built a garage." Mason scoffed, disbelief dripping from his voice. "A dictatorship? Really?" He waved it off with a smirk, but I didn't flinch. "You gave me a job, Mason, not a voice." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. My mom finally broke it, her voice soft but direct. "What do you want, Elena?" And there it was, the question. What did I want? Not revenge. I'd already had that. What I wanted now was closure. I stood slowly, pulling a sealed envelope from my bag and placing it on the table. "This is an affidavit confirming I've permanently withdrawn from the company loan, the board, and all business operations. You won't ever use my name again." Dad started to object, but I raised a hand. "I'm not done," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm also filing an anonymous tip with the state auditor. There are discrepancies, missing funds, unpaid vendors, payroll issues. It's all in their hands now. It's your mess to clean up." Mason's face turned red with anger. "You're ruining us? Over ego?" I reached for my purse, calm and composed. "I'm not destroying anything," I said simply. "I'm just removing the illusion that I was ever part of it." As I turned toward the door, my father said something I never thought I'd hear. "Alina, please." I paused, savoring the unexpected plea. Without turning back, I replied, "You left me a voicemail saying we were done. I'm just making it official." And then I walked out. I thought leaving would feel like a free fall, like losing ground beneath my feet. But it didn't. It felt like fresh air after years of suffocating. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I woke up without dread. My inbox wasn't a battlefield of problems I hadn't created. My calendar wasn't a prison of meetings I didn't belong in. And my phone didn't ring unless someone actually wanted to hear from me. I moved into a cozy loft downtown. Open windows, quiet mornings, and space. Both for a desk and for my peace of mind. I started consulting for small women-led startups, helping them do what I was never allowed to, make decisions, take control. It turned out the skills I'd honed in silence were invaluable in the right hands. One of my first clients, a determined founder, asked me why I left the family business. "Because I stopped confusing being useful with being respected," I said. She nodded, like she knew exactly what I meant. I saw Danielle a lot after that. Over coffee, we'd talk about the future, and she kept telling me I should start something bigger, something official. Why not a boutique consultancy? She said, help women escape toxic work environments and take control of their futures. One day we brainstormed a name on a coffee-stained napkin, Anchor and Flame, because sometimes you steady the ship and sometimes you burn it all down. Within months, everything changed. I found myself surrounded by a different kind of family. Women who had been cast aside for wanting independence, daughters, wives, sisters who were told they belonged, only to be pushed out when they dared to take control. Helping them didn't magically fix my own wounds, but it reminded me that I'd already healed. I didn't need apologies from my father, or respect from my brother, or validation from anyone who once convinced me to play small. I'd gained something way more important: freedom. And once you've tasted freedom, there's no going back. 3 months after the courtroom drama was finally over, I got one last envelope from the family business. It wasn't from my dad or Mason, it was from the bank. Inside was a simple letter. The commercial loan tied to your name has been fully transferred and settled. No further obligations remain. No thank you, no apology, just a final, blunt closing statement written in ink. I smiled. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in an apology or a heartfelt goodbye. Sometimes it's as simple as a balance statement filled with zeros. I placed the letter in a folder labeled complete and slid it to the back of my cabinet. That night, I opened my loft window wide, letting the cool city air rush in. The hum of the streets below was distant but alive, a stark contrast to the silence my family had once demanded. I allowed myself one last thought of the voicemail that changed it all. Don't bother coming to the reunion, we're cutting ties. They wanted silence, obedience, absence, and they got it. But what they didn't see coming was that I would thrive in that silence, that I would rebuild, not from revenge, but from truth. I became more than the invisible daughter they used for signatures and compliance. I became visible. I became whole. I poured myself a glass of wine and turned to a new client file. It belonged to a woman named Mira, locked out of her bakery's finances by her controlling husband. At the bottom of my notes, I scribbled, "You're not difficult. You're just finally visible." The candle on my windowsill flickered. The air shifted. The city buzzed with endless energy, and so did I. That was the last time I thought of it as cutting ties. Ties can choke, bind, and hold you back. But letting go allows you to stand on your own, taller and stronger than before. And that's exactly what I did.